At 0741 local time, 4 F-35Is screamed off the runway at Ramon Air Base. Call signs Venom 1 through 4, clawing east toward Iran's space headquarters that was feeding targeting data to its ballistic missiles. Everything about this strike package was designed to be invisible. But unknown to the formation, southeast of Tehran, an Iranian battery sitting cold, dark, and quiet had just found them. Over western Iran, Venom leads threat warning caught a radar burst. Short, sharp, then gone. A second burst hit them 40 kilometers later with a different bearing. Someone was handing them off. The formation was being tracked by crews who had learned to take one look and pass the picture down the line, never staying on long enough to attract a harm. Suddenly, Venom 3's engine management system lit amber across his helmet display. Turbine inlet temperature spiking past limits. The single Pratt & Whitney F-135, the only engine this jet carries, was already throttling itself back to protect the blades, shredding 15% of thrust without asking the pilot's opinion. Over friendly airspace, a turbine temp exceedance means a maintenance ride-up and an early lunch. Over Iran, one flameout puts an Israeli pilot in an ejection seat above the most hostile capital on Earth. Venom lead made the call in seconds. Venom 3 could not continue. Venom 4 would escort him out. Both jets peeled southwest on a modified corridor, nursing the sick engine toward Iraqi airspace while the rest of the formation pressed east. The formation just lost half of its aircraft over the most dangerous city on the planet. Venom 1 checked the mission clock. 9 minutes to the initial point. 3 minutes from the IP to weapons release. 12 total minutes with no ability to maneuver aggressively, no ability to go to afterburner, no ability to do anything that spikes their thermal signature. While every surviving Iranian air defense crew in the city was already staring at the gap in the sky where Venom 3 and 4 had been. Somewhere below, a radar that had been cold for 8 days was doing the same math. The weapons officers in Venom 1 and 2 stared at a number that had just gotten significantly worse. 8. The IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Space Headquarters, was a multi-building compound with rooftop antenna arrays connecting 3 Iranian satellites to the only people on Earth who could command them, plus control rooms managing orbital parameters and server infrastructure holding the encryption keys. 16 bombs could have covered every structure. 8 meant choosing. So the antenna arrays went first, control room second, server level third. 1 judgment spare each. The calculation that would have taken a targeting cell 30 minutes in peacetime took these 2 men 45 seconds at cruise altitude over Tehran. That's not improvisation. That's what happens when you train for the worst version of the day before the day arrives. But the weapons math was about to become a footnote, because 3,000 feet below their planned altitude, something had been sitting cold for 8 days and was about to wake up. The moment Venom 3 and 4 deviated from the planned corridor, every altitude block in the Tehran strike wave shifted. Dozens of Israeli packages were converging on the capital simultaneously. All stealth aircraft that couldn't see each other on radar because that was literally the point of their design. The Khayyam, Combined Air Operations Center at Al Udeid, pushed emergency deconfliction updates across the wave. Venom 1 and 2 received new altitude blocks 3,000 feet lower than the mission plan. That put them 3,000 feet closer to everything on the ground that wanted them gone, and into the detection envelope of a system the Israelis thought had been sitting this war out. While the formation dealt with the altitude change, a Khordad-15 battery southeast of the city had just detected them. The Khordad-15 battery commander had watched the entire war from behind a cold radar. He counted the Babar 373 batteries that radiated, fired, and stopped existing, each one answered by an AGM-88 HARM, a high-speed anti-radiation missile that homes in on radar signals within 90 seconds of its first transmission. Every battery that fought had lasted less than 2 minutes. He planned to last longer by never turning on his radar unless the shot was worth his life. His electro-optical tracker caught 2 thermal signatures at 35 kilometers, heading northwest towards central Tehran. An F-35 at military power pushes exhaust at 1,050 degrees Celsius, and against the cold upper atmosphere, that thermal bloom reads like a searchlight. The deconfliction cascade that pushed Venom lower had just handed this commander exactly what he wanted. He lit the Khayyam 804 for 3 seconds, just long enough to refine bearing and range before switching off. That 3-second burst is all the Khordad-15 gave away. The system runs on 2 trucks working together. One carries the Khayyam 804 PESA radar, passive electronically scanned array, detection range of 150 kilometers against conventional fighters. significantly less against stealth. The other carries 4 Sayyad-3 missiles in a 2x2 launcher. But the key, the reason this battery was still in action when every other system had been turned into scrap, is the electro-optical backup tracker, a passive optical sensor that doesn't radiate, doesn't broadcast, and cannot be detected by the F-35I's threat warning receiver. Think of it like sitting in a dark parking lot with your headlights off. You can see someone approaching by the glow of their phone. They have no idea you're there. The commander had just used his phone glow once. The PESA radar strained against the F-35I's minimal cross-section at that distance, and what should have been a crisp track on a conventional fighter was intermittent ghosts on a scope that couldn't decide if they were real. Not enough data for a firing solution, but enough to confirm that something was there. Inside Venom 1, the pilot's threat warning caught the burst before it ended and identified the battery instantly. Located across the F-35I's airframe are over 30 antennas that make up the AN/ASQ-239 Barracuda electronic warfare suite, the most sensitive threat detection system ever mounted on a fighter. Each antenna is tuned to a different frequency band, which means the jet listens across the entire electromagnetic spectrum at once. Think of it as 30 radio stations playing simultaneously, and the system picks out the one that just changed its song. Within those 3 seconds of the Khayyam 804's burst, the Barracuda had classified the emitter, geolocated the battery to within meters, and tagged it as a Khordad 15 southeast of the city. The Iranian commander didn't just reveal his position in those 3 seconds. He told the Israelis what system he was running and what missiles he carried. However, knowing where the battery sat and doing something about it were 2 very different problems. Venom 1 knew the Khordad 15 and Sayyad-3 missiles with a claimed 45-kilometer engagement envelope against stealth targets. The formation was inside 35 and heading straight for the battery. The Khordad 15 commander knew something was coming, but his PESA couldn't hold a track long enough to shoot. He went cold and watched the EO tracker as the thermals kept drifting northwest. He also knew what happened to every battery commander who went to continuous track, a harm in the air within seconds of the first sustained transmission. He could keep his radar cold and let someone else's missiles do the fighting. But on the EO tracker, the 2 thermals were drifting through 33 kilometers, 31. Every kilometer closer meant his Sayyad-3s needed less mid-course guidance to reach them, and less time for the harm to reach them. The geometry was tightening on both ends simultaneously, and he was in the middle. He had maybe 30 seconds of radar time before something moving at Mach 3 shut it off permanently. 30 seconds to reacquire 2 stealth contacts his radar could barely resolve, build a firing solution through active jamming, and get missiles off the rail. If those contacts reached their target in central Tehran, the IRGC would lose something it couldn't rebuild or move by morning. He lit the Khayyam 804 at full power. His crew tensed around the launcher, the radar operator adjusting parameters while the missile crew stood at the Sayyad-3 canisters with ignition circuits armed. 8 days of silence compressed into the next 30 seconds. What the battery commander didn't know yet was that the moment he went to continuous illumination, the harm seeker already had his address. And below, Venom 1 and Venom 2 opened up, every gun crew with a barrel end of prayer pointing skyward at aircraft it mathematically could not reach, while 8 bombs already falling through Iranian airspace were fighting an electronic warfare battle the pilots could monitor but couldn't control and couldn't abort. The Khordad 15 commander was fighting the jamming for one clean look at contacts he could feel but couldn't hold. If he caught a gap with his scope already running, he could build a solution before the harm arrived. If he was wrong about the timing, his system would join the list of batteries in the scrap heap. His display flickered between usable data and electronic noise, every partial solution dissolving into static before he could commit. Like trying to read a text message while someone keeps slapping the phone out of your hand. You catch a word, maybe 2, then it's gone. The harm was already below the radar horizon, invisible until the final moments, closing at Mach 3. 30 seconds became 20. 10. Then the jamming cycle shifted to another emitter farther west, and for 1 second, maybe 2, the display cleared. Two contacts snapped into focus at 31 kilometers. Clean bearing, clean range. His hand moved toward the firing panel, but it was already too late. If you look here at the AGM-88E HARM as it leaves the rail, that's high-speed anti-radiation missile, a name that barely does it justice. This missile has what you might call a memory like a grudge. 536 pounds, a 150-pound blast fragmentation warhead designed to shred antenna arrays into slag. Supersonic at over Mach 2, covering the distance from Dallas to San Antonio in under 2 minutes. Range past 90 miles. The defining feature? Shut off the radar it was chasing mid-flight, and the HARM doesn't care. It already memorized the coordinates the moment the beam came on. GPS and inertial navigation carry it home to a cold transmitter. The radar operator's last option is also useless. The guidance is the feature. The HARM homes in on radar emissions the way a heat seeker chases engine exhaust. Except shutting off the radar doesn't save you. The missile memorizes the coordinates where the radar was transmitting, then flies there on GPS and inertial navigation. Turn the radar off and the missile still arrives. It already knows the address. The AGM-88E Seeker acquired the Naheem 804 antenna from 8 kilometers out, below the radar horizon until the final seconds. 9 months of emissions discipline, 8 days watching other systems get erased for the sin of switching on a radar. The blast fragmentation warhead turned the antenna truck into scrap metal. A year of Iranian engineering under sanctions, answered by a missile the Americans order like printer paper. The last guided threat over Tehran was gone, but the formation still had to fly through the city to reach the target. And 8 days of getting bombed had turned every IRGC ground crew with a trigger into a one-man protest against Israeli air superiority. The Zu-23-2 autocannons hammered skyward at 800 rounds per minute per barrel, 23mm rounds arcing to an effective ceiling around 2,500 meters, well below the Adirs. The most expensive air defense system the Islamic Republic could still deploy, pointing straight at aircraft it mathematically could not reach. Disc 12.7mm tracers burned red arcs from rooftops like someone had scattered road flares across the skyline. Located around the F-35I's fuselage are 6 infrared cameras that make up the Distributed Aperture System, or DAS. These cameras give the pilot 360-degree spherical coverage that no fourth-generation fighter can match, painting every tracer stream on the helmet visor in real time. The picture looked like a fireworks display designed by someone who hated the audience. None of the fire was guided. A 23mm round doesn't need a fire control solution. It just needs to intersect the same cubic meter of air your canopy passes through. The pilots read the DOS and threaded between the densest arcs with the target straight ahead. But the weapons officers were staring at a GPS signal-to-noise ratio that said their bombs might not hit where they were aimed. 8 bombs for 4 buildings, no margin for error, and the electromagnetic environment over Tehran was actively trying to steer those bombs into the wrong neighborhood. If the GPS jamming won this fight, 4 250-pound warheads would land somewhere in central Tehran that wasn't the IRGC Space Headquarters, and the 5 satellites overhead would keep beaming targeting data to every IRGC missile crew still lobbing rounds at Israeli cities. The bomb bay doors opened for 3 seconds of maximum exposure. The F-35I's radar cross-section blooming from a marble to something 100 times larger. Every surviving radar within line of sight got a momentary flash on its scope. 8 GBU-39 small-diameter bombs dropped into Iranian airspace. The doors closed and the pilots banked west. If you look here at the GBU-39 as it falls away from the jet, each bomb weighs 285 pounds, stretches about 6 feet long, and deploys folding wings the moment it clears the bay. That gives it over 40 nautical miles of unpowered glide range from altitude. No engine, no propulsion at all. The pilot's part was done, but the bombs fight was just starting. Inside each GBU-39, 2 guidance systems work in parallel. GPS pulls signals from satellites orbiting 20,200 kilometers overhead, each one arriving at roughly the power of a car headlight seen from 10,000 miles away, weak enough that a kid with a $200 radio kit from Amazon could drown it out. The INS, Inertial Navigation System, runs independently, using micro-electromechanical systems to dread-reckon position with no outside input. In clean conditions, GPS corrects the INS over a dozen times per second, and the circular error probable, the radius within which the bomb will land, stays inside 5 meters. Tehran was not clean air. Iran had been running GPS denial since the first Tomahawk crossed the border on day one. Ground-based Iranian electronic warfare systems were pumping broadband noise into the GPS frequency bands. Iran acknowledged the jamming publicly as a military measure. The interference was heaviest directly over military infrastructure in Tehran, exactly where 8 guided bombs were now gliding toward their targets. If you look here at the guidance display, you'll see the 2 threats these bombs are fighting at once. Jamming is loud, like someone blasting a leaf blower outside your window during a phone call. You know you can't hear the other person, so you hang up and wait. The INS shoulders the load and dead reckons from the last clean GPS update. But every second without a satellite fix is like walking a straight line blindfolded, where each step wanders a little further from where you think you are. CEP climbing from 5 meters toward 20, and 20 meters in urban Tehran is the difference between the space headquarters and the apartment building next door. Same warhead, very different headlines. Spoofing is worse. Spoofing is your GPS confidently telling you to turn left into a lake, except the voice sounds exactly like your wife, so you don't question it. Iranian EW systems were broadcasting signals that looked like real GPS. Correct format, correct frequency, correct timing, but reporting positions that didn't exist. If the bomb accepts a spoof signal, it steers with absolute confidence toward the wrong address. Perfect turn-by-turn directions to someone else's building. The GBU-39 fought back with the one card Iran couldn't match. Each bomb's guidance uses encrypted military PY code through a SESM receiver, the Selective Ability Anti-Spoofing Module. This is a hardened waveform that requires cryptographic keys Iran almost certainly hadn't cracked and Russia wasn't sharing. The receiver rejected every civilian band fake and hunted through the noise for authenticated military satellites. It found them, intermittent, degraded, fighting through the jamming floor, but verified and trustworthy. Authenticated fixes yanked the INS drift back toward accuracy like a leash correcting a wandering dog. CEP tightened back towards single digits. 12 seconds to impact. Terminal guidance kicked in with the diamond wings correcting 10 times per second, each adjustment smaller than the last as the aim point sharpened from a neighborhood to a rooftop to a single antenna cluster. The first SDB punched through the rooftop antenna array. The uplink connecting 5 Iranian satellites to their ground station dropped off the spectrum mid-transmission. Second weapon hammered the control room. Computers managing orbital parameters and encryption keys shattered under the overpressure. Third buried itself in the server level. Fourth tore through the foundations and finished the collapse. 500 kilometers overhead, the Khayyam satellite sent its next telemetry query toward the coordinates hard-coded in its flight computer. The signal reached the patch of Earth where the dishes had stood 4 seconds earlier and hit rubble. The satellite waited for acknowledgement and sent the query again. Jamran-1 tried the same address, and so did Noor-3, launched 3 months earlier to cheering crowds. 3 satellites still circling the Earth turned into the world's most expensive screensavers. Israel didn't need an anti-satellite weapon, just 4 250-pound bombs and a building address. If you enjoyed this video, watch one of our other videos on the US and Israel pounding Iran. Bye for now.